Day 511. Today there are a lot of updates from the south. Here Ukrainian and Russian forces made a series of massive and devastating missile exchanges. After a successful strike on the Kerch Bridge, President Putin declared that he was already discussing with the High Command possible options for retaliation. The Ukrainian command understood that this meant only one thing: a massive drone and missile strike. The only question was what would be the main target. The main target of the Russian strike was the harbor in Odesa. At first, Russian Air Force launched several waves of drones to exhaust the Ukrainian air defense. Based on the footage of the successful interception of drones above Odesa by the Ukrainian air defense, this tactic worked. After that, Russians flooded the airspace with rockets, almost all of which headed towards Odesa. Local residents in Crimea filmed the moments of the launch of 16-caliber cruise missiles from Kozacha Bay in Sevastopol. On top of that, it was reported that at least 8 strategic bombers Tu-22 launched 15 missiles of various types. The greatest devastation was faced by the harbor in Odesa. The strike aimed to destroy all the infrastructure necessary for loading cargo and also grain terminals. In fact, grain terminals took the largest hit, because this was a symbolic withdrawal from the grain deal. It was reported that apart from rendering the whole harbor unusable, Russian missiles also destroyed 60,000 tons of grain. Later, the Russian ministry gave a statement and declared that the grain deal was officially over, and any ships passing through the region would be considered military targets, and the countries of the flags of these ships would be considered enemy states that entered the war. Apart from the main harbor in Odessa city, Russians also made sure to target secondary harbors in the Odessa and Mykolaiv regions. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that several industrial objects were hit. Judging by the footage, one was an oil depot and another one a small ammunition depot. Unfortunately, some missiles hit the residential areas, including a shopping mall in Odessa. Ukrainian forces responded reciprocally. The first target of the Ukrainian strike became Melitopol. Local residents reported hearing at least 5 explosions somewhere on the outskirts of the city. Ukrainian Melitopol mayor confirmed that Ukrainians struck Russian military bases. Immediately after that, explosions were reported in Mikhailivka, which is a prefrontal stronghold west of Tokmak. Several hours ago, Ukrainians also hit the Russian base in Skadovsk, which is located on the Black Sea coast. All 3 strikes were reportedly conducted by HIMARS and primarily targeted areas of personnel concentrations. Ukrainians also conducted several HIMARS strikes in the east. Local residents of Yasinovato reported hearing multiple explosions, followed by secondary detonations. Later, it was confirmed that Ukrainians successfully struck an ammunition depot. The second package of HIMARS rockets targeted Russian military objects in Donetsk. Geolocated footage shows an explosion on the Russian military site on the outskirts of the city. But the most devastating strike was conducted in Crimea. Here, Russian forces had a huge military site that was even bigger than some of the villages around it. The site was also located on one of the main supply roads. Russian sources reported that Ukrainians struck the Russian base with 3 ballistic missiles Hrim-2. The missiles hit the ammunition depot, which caused a massive explosion that could be heard more than 30 kilometers away. The secondary detonations continued throughout the day, which did not allow to put out the fire. Due to the sheer scale of fire, local authorities had to close the highway and start evacuating residents from the nearby villages. It was reported that at least 5 villages were considered to be in the danger zone. The fate of thousands of Russian soldiers on the base is unknown. Overall, in response to the massive public discontent associated with the second successful destruction of the Kerch Bridge, Russians decided to combine a massive missile strike with a loud exit from the notorious grain deal to rapidly change the sentiment in the Russian media space. However, it was in vain, as less than 1 day later, Ukrainians conducted the first successful missile strike on Crimea. The destruction of the massive ammunition depot that continued to detonate the whole day produced so many videos that flooded the media space that the sentiment worsened even more. Interestingly, many Russian analysts are speculating that Ukrainians used Storm Shadow missiles for this strike, but the Russian Ministry of Defense did not want to admit that Ukrainians dared to do it, partially because they do not know how to react to this publicly. In the meantime, Ukrainians conducted a successful series of strikes targeting 3 areas of forces concentrations, 2 ammunition depots, and 1 base in Crimea that had a lot of soldiers and ammunition. If you're against the invasion of Ukraine and you want to support the work that I'm doing, consider making a purchase in the online store, UA Supporter. Here you can find a lot of products with Ukrainian symbols to not only show support for this channel, but also for Ukraine. The link to the online store is in the description. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next report.